Welcome friends to another r/am I the jerk here video. Would you be the jerk for firing an employee for not reading an email? We'll find out, but first a story from Friggly. Am I the jerk for getting angry when my partner announced she's pregnant? My partner, 34-year-old female, and I, 28-year-old male, have been together for 5 years. She has a daughter, 8, from a previous relationship. Right off the bat, it was made known I had fertility issues and likely wouldn't be able to father a child. I moved slow in the relationship, although I'd fallen in love with her fast. When things got serious, I overheard her telling her sister she was concerned that I might be an aggressive type person because of the amount of scars I have. I didn't want her scared away, so I told her I had a bad childhood and left it at that. A little over 2 years into our relationship, I felt somewhat comfortable opening up, and for the first time, I told her exactly why I'm infertile, which is a direct result of an injury I suffered due to trauma as a child. She was really empathetic, and I was just thankful I'd found the one I want to spend my life with that also came with a kid I adore. Fast forward to last summer, my partner and her friend decided to play an impromptu prank on me. I came home from work. There were multiple positive pregnancy tests in the bathroom. My partner announced she was pregnant. I started freaking out. A happy freak out, because I thought I had hit the lottery with the slim to none chances I have. They both started laughing. The tests were from my friend and not my partner. I was pretty much devastated and felt really let down that my partner would actually pull a prank like that. At first, she was shocked by my reaction and said, "I thought you'd know it was a joke considering your circumstances." She ended up apologizing after realizing how hurt I was. Now for the point of the post. 3 weeks ago, she arranged a huge dinner with her entire family at our house. She had us play this stupid mystery game and ultimately announced to everyone she's pregnant. Her mothers and sisters were deliriously happy. Immediately, I got pissed thinking this was yet another prank. So I showed absolutely no emotions, which everyone caught on to. I said to my partner, "Either you're just mentally disturbed or you're cheating." That's pretty much when all heck broke loose. My partner's POV is that she was sincerely apologetic about the prank, and I should know her well enough to not think she'd ever pull that stunt again. She's also livid at me for ruining the announcement, embarrassing her in front of her entire family, causing them to think I'm a horrible person, and then finally insinuating that she's a cheater. I still stand by my claim that had she never pranked me, my reaction would have been different. I do find it odd she decided to tell me along with her family. Things would have likely went over better if she had told me first, and then we announced it together. But I'm starting to think I acted immaturely, causing a scene in front of her family, and I think that's maybe where I'm wrong. Would you guys agree with me that when announcing a pregnancy, this is something you always tell your partner before you go and publicly announce it like that? I think it's understandable and OP's not the jerk to feel the way OP did here and assume it's a joke, because OP wasn't briefed on this, so it coming out of the blue like that feels exactly the same and not as serious, to be honest. Do you guys agree that you need to inform and brief your partner and announce it together instead of jumping the gun like OP's partner did here? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is from Zara Hamilton X. Am I the jerk for my reaction when my sister's boyfriend mocked my husband's profession? I, female 32, went to meet my sister's new boyfriend. He comes from a well-off family, and he himself owns a number of assets. My parents and sisters are going nuts over this catch. They told me I had to come meet him and be polite, which I normally am, but they know I can get in arguments with guests who are not too nice. Anyways, we met, and we had dinner. Then he asked about my husband's profession. I told him my husband was a warehouse worker. He looked shocked and asked about his age. I said 31. He made a face and said, "In his 30s and works a job like that? Don't get me wrong, but I don't understand how women put up with that." I looked at him confused, but he continued and said, "I mean, working from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. with barely enough money to pay for food and necessities must be frustrating to live with an individual like that." My parents and sister got quiet and looked at me waiting to see how I react. I just leaned back, kept my cool, which is something I do normally, and said, "No, not at all. In fact, I'm lucky to have him as my partner because looking around, I could see a lot of high-value men with low-quality character, and it seems like my sister just got one." He was shocked, and my sister looked at me like, what the freak? He got offended and excused himself to the bathroom. Didn't even finish his dinner. My sister and parents went off on me, saying I was way out of line for the stuff I said and that I just offended the dude and made him feel so uncomfortable he couldn't even finish dinner. I pointed out how he insulted my husband, by extension me, and put his efforts down, but they told me to get over myself and that he was telling the truth. I mean, he never even met my husband. What truth could he know about him? They said he must have meant it as a stereotype, but I thought it was still unacceptable. Anyways, we argued and I had to go home. My sister sent a series of texts berating me and calling me a jealous witch and demanding an apology from me. Am I the jerk? Did I go too far here? I think OP's not the jerk here. I think it's just frankly disappointing to see somebody so eager to put another man down. Not only was this guy a jerk and acting off of a presumed stereotype, but they were basically putting this guy down and tearing apart what they were doing or what they've achieved, or basically saying that they're a failure. So I think OP's more than justified for sticking up for their husband. This dude was like crazy classist. This next story is from Cool Contract 9660. Am I the jerk for giving my girlfriend's makeup to my best friend's girlfriend? My girlfriend Jade, 21-year-old female, and I, 22-year-old female, have been dating for 2 years. She's a fantastic partner, kind, caring, and loving. Genuinely haven't met someone who didn't love her. My childhood best friend Kevin, 22-year-old male, recently started dating Katie, 24-year-old female, a couple months ago. Jade is very into makeup. Like, really. Her makeup collection at this point is probably worth around $10,000. Well, last weekend I hosted a get-together at our place so that we could get to know Katie better. I offered our spare room up so that everyone could drink. After a couple of drinks in, Katie asked to use the bathroom. When she came out of the bathroom, she was holding one of my girlfriend's eyeshadow palettes that she had accidentally left in there while rushing to get ready, and was raving about how long she had wanted it. Without thinking, I said she could take it, considering Jade has an extensive collection and probably wouldn't miss it. Jade didn't say anything, but I could tell by her look that she was fuming. When everyone went off to bed, Jade confronted me and told me off for offering up her palette. I told her if it was that big of a deal, I could buy her a new one. This made her more upset, and she said that it was a limited edition palette, so that couldn't happen, and demanded I ask for it back. I said no, because to ask for the item back is weird and that I'd buy her a similar one. This happened Saturday night, and it's Thursday and she still won't let it go. She's barely spoken to me since and is very sulky. Am I the jerk? I think if OP doesn't apologize and immediately go ask for that palette back ASAP, then yeah, they're a major jerk. Imagine somebody has collectible anything. Let's say like cards or like Funko Pops. Somebody comes by and says, "Oh, I love that Funko Pop. I've been wanting to get that one for a while." The partner, not knowing anything about those Funko Pops, says, "Oh, yeah, well, they have like 50, so just take it." Turns out, you just let them walk out with your partner's limited edition Funko Pop that if you want to buy another one, you're going to buy a really marked up price. Now apply that to makeup, and it's even worse because makeup you actually actively use. So if you bought another one, you would have to make sure it is brand new. I think the bottom line here is don't go around gifting other people's things. You wouldn't like it if mom donated some of your toys as a kid. By the way, if you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss any of my daily videos. Our next story is from Throwaway for Funds 69. Am I the jerk for telling my wife to stop being a jealous witch? Both my wife, female 31, and I, male 32, work in the tech industry. We graduated from the same university with the same degree and work for the same company. Where we differ is within the company. I opted to go down the management route and hers down a more technical route. For one reason or another, she's not gotten a promotion or proper raise in nearly 2 years, which has led to a bit of an income imbalance between us, where I currently earn double what she does. I've felt a bit of jealousy from her side, but I've always chalked it up to her competitive attitude. She's made jokes in the past regarding how the only reason I earn more than her is because I'm a man. My direct superior is a woman, and how I'm fortunate I'm a good talker because I would otherwise not be as successful. True. This all culminated to a bit of what I thought was banter. It was not. Last week, where she said she was smarter than me, and I kept making dumb comments. Things like, Man smart, woman dumb, haha, which agitated her further. She then spent the next several hours making me take those dumb online IQ tests until I intentionally failed one, which pissed her off even more. Then this past weekend, she had a surprise for me, which was an official IQ test. We got the results yesterday, and imagine the scenes when I scored higher. She was obviously infuriated and kept saying dumb crap, which I kept laughing off until she called me freaking drug baby. My bio mom was a drug addict, and I've had no relationship with her since I was 5. She died before I turned 18. This upset me more than it should, considering she wasn't really wrong, and I, in turn, resorted to calling her dumb, jealous witch. She has not spoken to me since and is sleeping in a guest bedroom tonight. I think I'm justified in my actions, but I do feel bad that I used her insecurities against her in the heat of the moment. So, am I the jerk? Most people in the comments on this post seem to think that everybody's the jerk here, but I don't know. I feel like most of it was generated and perpetuated from the wife's actions here. The comments about why OP would be successful and then goading OP saying she was smarter. I think that all just motivated OP to play into it. This wasn't something that came of OP's own accord. And then the IQ test thing goes down and it goes off the rails immediately, starting from her side. I think OP's not the jerk here, but I can understand the distinction of saying everybody does suck here, because in this relationship, there really is no winning side. It just sounds so dysfunctional. Our next story is from Are You Okay? Am I the jerk for breastfeeding my nephew? I'm 29-year-old female. My sister, 25-year-old female, gave birth a week ago. But unfortunately, due to complications during birth, she's been in the hospital unconscious and is yet to formally meet her baby. My husband, her doctor, had been using some of the breast milk that I pumped to feed the baby until the mom wakes up to decide whether she would like to continue breastfeeding the baby herself or to go a different route. My brother-in-law, 34-year-old male, is one of my best friends, and we decided that he should move in temporarily so my husband and I could help with the baby, because he's been so stressed about his wife lying in the hospital and also having a newborn. Pumping's been rather difficult because I also have to breastfeed my own kids, twin 11-month-olds, and I thought it better to just feed my nephew directly from the breast as well, because it saves me both time and pain. My husband and brother-in-law didn't contest and thought it was the best solution. However, his mom, sister's mother-in-law, came to visit to see the baby earlier today, saw me breastfeeding him, and she immediately blew up calling me vile names, saying I was disgusting and this was inhumane. My brother-in-law was in the next room and came in once he heard the yelling. He immediately defended me and told his mom that what I was doing was simply feeding the baby and literally keeping him alive. But she would hear none of it and literally spat on the floor, saying what I'm doing is demonic. My brother-in-law got her out of the house and basically told her that she would not be allowed around the baby until she apologized for her outburst. I now can't seem to get it out of my mind that maybe what I'm doing is wrong, and I might have been the jerk for even suggesting that I breastfeed my nephew. Just wait until somebody explains to this mother-in-law the concept of wet nurses. I think it's pretty safe to say that OP's not the jerk here, and frankly, I think the mother-in-law is making this some kind of weird, sexually undertoned thing. I just don't see how breastfeeding can be demonic and disgusting or inhumane. Like as if OP's trying to take advantage of this kid somehow. If anything, the mother-in-law is a prude and is the one who's disgusting and vile, because whatever she has going on in her mind is twisted as heck. This next story is from Kryptonite Digger. Am I the jerk for refusing to wear a dress to my friend's wedding? I, 18 male, am transgender, aka I used to be a girl. My friend's getting married soon and wants me to be there. I said I would love to come and can't wait. I sent them a picture of what I would be wearing, and his fiance came back and told me that I can't wear a suit and tie to her wedding. At first, I assumed she meant that they wanted the men to be in tuxedos. So I asked her what color she wanted it, as I don't own one and don't want to buy something for me to not be able to wear it. She didn't come back. I waited about a week and texted her again. She finally replied and said that it wasn't that I needed to wear a tux, it was that I wasn't allowed to wear a suit. I was a bit confused about this and asked her what she wanted me to wear. I wasn't sure if it was one of those casual weddings. She came back and said that she wants the women to wear dresses. I presumed she thought I was coming with a girlfriend, and so I told her I'm not with anyone, it'll just be me. She then replied with this: "Are you thick or something? I was talking about you. You are a girl whether you like it or not. You'll be wearing a dress to my wedding or you will not be coming." I was very hurt by this and contacted my friend. They said they've talked to her already and they want to please her, so just this once, do you mind sucking it up? I told him that I'm a boy, I identify as a boy, and so I will dress like a boy. His fiancée messaged me and told me that she saw what I had said, and why do I have to make this such a big deal? It's one day. I said I'm a boy, so I will be wearing a suit, end of. She told me not to come, but I want to see my friend get married and he wants me there, so I'll be going in a suit if she likes it or not. So am I the jerk? I think pretty clearly OP's not the jerk here. Frankly, would you guys agree with me that even beyond gender and identity, regardless of who you are, if you want to wear a suit, that it should be more than fine to wear one? I just don't see the issue here, and frankly, if they were OP's real friend, they would have gone more at bat for OP here. This next story is from Sugar Barbie XO. Am I the jerk for showing up the bride? I, 24-year-old female, attended my boyfriend's, 25-year-old male, sister-in-law's, 27-year-old female's wedding, his brother's wife's sister, and now no one is talking to him, his sister, or me. I just graduated college and I'm currently in the job market. I'm thankful enough that my boyfriend of almost 3 years offered to let me move in with him while I try to make my $13 an hour internship into a livable career. But that being said, I'm very strapped for cash. The money I do have goes to student loan payments and groceries, while he takes care of the rest. I met his in-laws about 2 years ago at his brother's wedding, and it seemed like we all hit it off. I guess for context, I should say that they're all white and I'm Indian. I had a year to save money for a new dress when we got the save the dates, but it seemed like such a waste of money. I was still a full-time student and the money I made went to all my bills. I decided to just wear one of my old lehenga, which is very, very simple. It's pale blue with a gold design. I didn't wear bangles or a nath, just the outfit, a simple pair of hoop earrings, and my heels. The ceremony was beautiful, and my boyfriend and I were walking into the reception. At first, I thought everyone was staring because, brown person at an old money New England wedding and all that. But then my boyfriend's mom comes up and asks what I'm wearing. She then says the bride is sobbing because people are talking about how pretty my dress is instead of hers, and paying more attention to me. Honestly, I didn't know what to do. It was black tie, and everyone was dressed very nicely, and the bride looked stunning. The only difference was I wasn't in Western wear. I asked what she wanted me to do, and she asked if I had any other dresses. Other than more dressy lehengas or summer dresses, it was a no. I just offered to go home if she was that uncomfortable with my being there. My boyfriend's mom said that it was a dramatic response, and if I wanted to, I could. Anyways, my boyfriend wanted to leave because he didn't want to make a scene, and honestly, I didn't feel comfortable being stared at. His family and in-laws aren't talking to us, and the bride demands an apology. She apparently made a comment along the lines of, she works all the time and he pays all the bills. So I don't understand how she couldn't have just bought a new dress. His sister's the only one on my side, saying they're being intolerant of my culture. And even if I was in an evening dress, people would have still talked about me. I feel awful and want to apologize, but my boyfriend said it wasn't my fault and the families are overreacting. I don't agree with him. It's a special day for the bride. And maybe I should have asked to borrow a Western-style dress from one of my friends? Should I have tried to blend into their culture more? I also don't want my boyfriend and his sister to lose their family over this. Am I the jerk? Bottom line here, I don't think OP could be the jerk because they tried to do their best and wore what they could within reason. And it was never the intention to upstage them, and the second it became a potential issue, they offered to remove themselves, so how can anybody continue to attack OP who try to correct it? This next story is from Linabis. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend he's not allowed to eat in front of the neighbor's kid unless he's willing to share? My boyfriend made himself a plate of leftover Chinese for lunch today. At the time, we had the neighbor's kid over to play with our kids. The neighbor's kid asked if he could have some too. My boyfriend said no and ate his plate of food. The kid is 5. When I heard the story, it broke my heart. I told my boyfriend in the future to either send the kid home first or only eat what he's willing to share with him. My boyfriend thinks he should do whatever he wants in his own home, regardless of who's over. He also said if it was one of our kids that asked, he would of course share. He doesn't like the neighbor's kid and feels feeding him isn't our responsibility. Am I the jerk for expecting him to share, or at the very least, send him home so he isn't eating in front of him? Thank you. I think OP's not the jerk here, but honestly this is one of those things that's a little on the line, because I do believe that it's a little uncomfortable to go and just eat something like that right in front of company. But I also do vibe a lot with the notion that in their house they should be able to do what they want. And having grown up in a time where my family wasn't the most well off financially, the idea of giving a friend who just happened to be swinging by like a 5-year-old kid food seemed like a kind of foreign idea to me. I don't think OP's the jerk for what they said and did, but I also don't necessarily think the boyfriend is quantifiably wrong. Our next story is from Tired, Need a Nap. Am I the jerk for snapping at my nanny for waking me up? I have a 5-year-old and a 2-month-old. The transition from 1 to 2 has been tough, especially with a newborn. My husband's been amazing help, but he had to go on a business trip. Him going on this would ensure he didn't have to travel for at least a year. I told him to go as it was only a week. 4 days in, I was exhausted and overwhelmed. I got maybe an hour or 2 of sleep each night, combined with each kid's needs, housework, and me semi-transitioning back to work. I have no help outside my nanny. No family in the area, friends are busy with work. Our nanny's also transitioning into caring for both kids. With a pay raise, now $30 an hour, she's mainly cared for my eldest since birth. He's gone to camp this summer, so she's worked about 25 hours a week. Still compensated for her usual 36. I was fried and wiped, offering her overtime to come in while my son was at camp to watch the baby for 4 hours so I could nap. I told her if she didn't want to, it was fine and I'd try to find a sitter. She insisted she could do it. I gave her the condition that I was not to be woken up unless there was a true emergency. Someone is ill or injured, there's a fire, or the baby won't take her bottle. Mainly breastfed, but usually will take a bottle, or is inconsolable. She agreed. Keep in mind that she's worked for us since our oldest was a baby. She has experience with newborns and knows what comes with that. I finally fall into a much needed deep sleep. It feels like 5 minutes, turned out to be 30. I'm being shaken awake. At first I just feel groggy and disoriented. The nanny was leaning over me saying, "The baby had a blowout." It took me a minute to come to my senses and finally said, "Okay." She asked if she should have a bath. Do I want the sheets thrown in the wash, etc.? I then realized there was no true emergency. It's normal for babies at this age to have that happen. And I've told her in the past, if my eldest wets the bed, just leave the sheets in the laundry room and give him a bath. She just kept staring at me, so I snapped. "Just do what you would do for eldest kid. Why did you wake me up?" She got defensive and said she was just checking. I reminded her of our deal and she walked out. I tried to fall back asleep, but couldn't as my baby was crying from getting a bath and being changed. I would have slept through it if I hadn't been woken up, as they were in another room. I always wake up if she's beside me. The baby stopped crying, but I was wide awake and couldn't fall back asleep. After an hour, I gave up, went and grabbed my nanny, dismissing the nanny. She texted me later saying I disrespected her and she didn't deserve that. I told her I was sorry for my tone, but that it wasn't an emergency and it defeated the purpose of me getting a break. I paid her for the full 4 hours, even though she was only there for 2, as I did choose to dismiss her. She says I'm the mom, so it shouldn't be a burden. It's not a burden, but I needed the break and she was being paid $45 an hour, overtime rate. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk here because I feel like it's very understandable why they acted like they did. And after the fact, they apologized and paid way more than they even needed to. And then the nanny has to go and be a disrespectful witch right back to OP, trying to insinuate more or less that OP's a bad mom. Like, okay, I know OP snapping got your underwear all up in a twist and whatnot, but you don't have to go throwing around accusations that, for OP, their kids are a burden. This next story is from Throwaway 097,000. Am I the jerk for asking a friend not to use me in her art? An old friend of mine just notified me that she's writing a play with the hopes of getting it produced by a reputable theater in her town. The problem is that one of the 3 characters in the play is based on me, and the name of the character is my full name, first and last. I told her I was uncomfortable with her using my name and asked her to please change it. She said no and insisted that she has every right to use my name. I'm a very private person, and this friend knows that about me and pointed out that the character based on me is also private, and that this somehow makes her play meta and hilarious. She seemed a little amused by my objections to her using my name. She also seemed indignant that I would ask her to use a different name for this character, claiming that it was her right as an artist to use whatever parts of her life she wanted, including me, and that I was trying to encroach on her artistic freedom. So, am I the jerk for asking her not to use my name? I think OP is definitely not the jerk, and this is just downright creepy behavior. I'm not sure of the legality here, but considering OP probably has this in writing from the friend saying that that character is based on OP using OP's full name, I'm going to assume that there is a legitimate legal grounds to be had upon here if OP's friend decides to move forward with that. You can't just take somebody's identity and pop it into something without at least a blatant disclaimer that any likenesses or personalities are fictionalized or dramatized heavily. I wouldn't be beyond threatening legal action over something like this because I'd feel the same way and hoping that resolves it. If not, maybe you do have to move forward with it. And if they expect to profit off of this, you can probably assert to a cut of those profits. And our final story of the day is from Clave0051. Am I the jerk for firing a person for not reading email? Many years ago, I moved to a very high cost of living city as upper management, non-US country. One of the business units I took over was a team that was well compensated even for the field and country. Their bonuses were directly influenced by their individual and team performance. At a rough estimate, the junior level made around 9 times for their demographic and between 2 to 2.5 times for their field. This is relevant. Eventually I switched jobs, but with the same employer. Recently I've returned to wind down our remaining business operations in the country. The geopolitical situation in the region has been harsh on the city, and everyone with the means to do so has already left for good, not Ukraine. While the employer paid incredibly well, the field is very niche, and my former team would be hard-pressed to find employment elsewhere. I discussed with boss, owner of company, and made them this offer. Option A was if they decided to relocate to a preferred country, 6 first world countries, we'd give them the same job and the same terms for pay. Option B, if they decided they wanted to relocate to one of a larger number of countries, we would allow that, but we wouldn't be able to offer them the same job and terms, and we'd pay the market rate for whatever role we ended up putting them under. The goal was to get them out of their current country and give them a chance at setting up a life elsewhere. This was communicated clearly and in writing to every person on the team. Everyone chose option A except for one guy I'll call Jack. Where Jack wanted to go, the only roles available were all a huge step down, and maybe only 20% of his previous pay. I emailed Jack explaining this and asked him to confirm. He confirmed that he understood. Okay then. The arrangements took a couple of months of juggling numbers, negotiating, and consulting lawyers. I sent out the new employment contracts. Jack's response was quick, nasty, and he CC'd every manager up his chain. Contents included insulting, didn't value staff, hypocrites, you get the idea. His managers responded before I even read the email. Jack's next message apologized, saying how he didn't have time to read emails and responded without reading everything, and asked to switch to option A. Here's where I might be the jerk. When I checked my email and saw his original response, I withdrew his offer. The amount of time, effort, and money that had gone into ensuring we could get them visas had already been quite costly. If he was insulted by our effort, then consider it withdrawn. Jack emailed begging, saying that he'd take option B. I informed him that he was on garden leave effective immediately, and once we completed the dissolution of the company, our relationship would come to an end and wished him luck. Am I the jerk? These employees were all undergoing a major relocation situation, and they couldn't even be bothered to read the email. They didn't deserve either option. Opie is clearly not the jerk. They were moving countries and they couldn't even skim the email to read the details. You went to this person and said, hey, you're moving to a different country, you have 2 options, and they literally couldn't read the 2 options. That just blows my mind. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another Am I the Jerk Here story that was way crazier than any of the ones in this video, click on that left video. Or, if you missed my latest video, check out the one on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.